Hey everybody, welcome. We have a special guest for you today. One of my business partners here, Zach Chrissy. He has been with, how long have you been with us now, Zach?
It's been just under 6 months.
Okay, cool. So he's been in the business just under 6 months. He's had multiple weeks over 10,000 AP. 10,000 is like your floor now you shoot for, right?
Yep.
Awesome, cool. Was it always like that?
No, I was barely doing 2,000 AP in a week when I first started. Consistency and everything like that has kind of, helped me over time.
Awesome, cool. So what were some of the unique challenges that you faced when you started?
I think the biggest challenge for me personally, I came from a line of work where I wasn't, talking to people. So for me, it was, getting on the phones, talking to people, basically learning how to talk almost, and the biggest thing that helped me again was getting on the phone. The more people that told me no, the more people I talked to, the better I got at it. The easier it was for me to overcome different, obstacles that came up on the phone.
Awesome. How frustrating was that for you when you started?
Very frustrating because, at first you're not always making the money that you want to. So you're looking at what you're making immediately to what, is down the road. So it can be very frustrating at first.
How'd you push through that?
For me, just because I have a wife and a son, so I always used them as the reason of why I do things. So I would think about that as I was getting frustrated, and I would think, well, if I quit now, I'm never going to get to where I want to be.
100%. Did you have a plan B when you started?
Honestly, no, I didn't.
Do you think that helped you?
Yes, because it made me think, this is my only option. I have to succeed at this.
Awesome. Cool. And I found that that's why when we bring people on here, you didn't have to do that letter of commitment thing, but you did it internally to yourself mentally. So now when we start people, for anybody watching this, when I start agents, I have them go through and sign a letter of commitment. Yes, people are 1099. I can't tell them how much to work, but I can decide who I want to work with. And if someone's not going to put in 50 plus hours a week, I don't want to work with them. If they're not going to attend the training sessions, learn, go through the training modules and stuff, I don't want to work with that person, because what happens is when you have that plan B and you have the escape route, it's easy to take it. And when your back's against the wall and you have a sense of urgency and desperation, you'll do whatever it takes. So,
right.
How did you organize your life at home with your work? Because you never had to do that before, right?
No. So when I started this, I kind of sat down with my wife and I was like, hey, a lot of people look at this as you're working from home, so it's you can go out and do whatever you want. Well, you can't, because if you do that, then you're not going to be on the phone. You're not going to be putting in the hours that you need to. So I sat down with her and was like, hey, I need to treat this, like a normal job, to where I have to work a certain amount of hours in a week. Obviously it's not a normal job, but you have to treat it, as such, because you're running your own business in a sense. It's up to you. Mm-hmm. How much work you put in is how much, obviously money you're going to make and the results you're going to see out of it.
Exactly. So it's hey, how much do you put in is what you're going to get out. And a lot of people have that trouble with that balance at home. So it's important to have that conversation with people at home if you're getting into telesales, because that consistent effort in the beginning is important. If you're not able to do that, then it's a lot.
100%.
What type of challenges? What other challenges did you face when you started in talking to people, or in conversations, or maybe calling leads? What other challenges did you run into?
I think I would get tongue-tied, when people at the beginning would tell me, you're not interested or something like that. I would stumble over my words, and once I would stumble over my words, I would get click and they would hang up on me. But the more I talked to more people, the more I was able to overcome the objections, the better I got at it, the smoother it came out, and it was just easier for me. So now when somebody comes with an objection, I just, like that, and, move on past it.
Okay, cool. So let's transition into that. Let's talk. Let's see if we can provide some value here to people in handling objections. So By the way, I didn't even say this before, but we sell final expense over the phone. That's all we sell. So let's run through some of the objections that you'll get in the greeting. I posted one of your calls recently, and you handled some objections in the greeting real well, and also objections in the close. But what's the most common objection that you get in the beginning of your presentation?
Either I'm not interested or I already have a policy. So
Okay.
obviously, yeah, those are the two most common for me.
Okay. And when you get I'm not interested, how do you handle that?
Just say, yeah, I totally understand. It's just my job to get you all this information, in the quickest amount of time possible. Acknowledge that they do have the objection, acknowledge what they're saying, but move past it and then continue on with, giving them the information that they had requested.
Awesome. Cool. And if anybody wants a copy of the script that Zach uses, just email me, jve@thejve.com, and I'll send it over to you. So after you handle that, also subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications, please. We appreciate the support. So after you say that and handle that, do you go right back into your script, or how do you do that? Do you ask a question, or what do you do? Because a lot of people say, I feel like. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say I go right back into the script. So as soon as they give me the objection, I have acknowledged the objection they have, respond to it, but then I move on and continue with, going through the script and then going from there.
Okay. So you just acknowledge and then keep going like they didn't really say anything.
Yeah.
Awesome. And if someone tells you that they have insurance, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I'd be like, hey, 9 times out of 10, most of the people I do speak with, they do have a policy in place. However, they do find the information valuable, and then boom, go into the script. Acknowledge that they have what they have, go through the script a little bit, build some rapport with them, ask questions about whatever it may be. If it's like the holidays recently passed a couple months ago, ask them about what they did for the holidays, build the relationship with them, and then, build that trust, and then you can kind of, bring out some information of what policy they do have, how much coverage they have, what they're kind of looking for in another policy or something along those lines.
Okay, cool. What if someone tells you that they don't have time? So someone says, I don't have time. I'm busy right now.
I'll say, hey, listen, I don't have a lot of time either. It's just my job to get you this information in the shortest amount of time possible, and then boom, go into it. Acknowledge that, you're just as busy as they are, and then boom, go into the rest of the script.
Awesome. So it's kind of like agree, acknowledge, and then just move past it.
Yeah, I always agree with what they're saying to me. I never, ignore the objection. I always say, hey, I hear you. I hear what you're saying, and then continue on.
So when you started, I know you were saying those things. So like why, and you were struggling with that. So what changed? Why is that easier to push through now? Like what changed about what you say or how you say it?
Just more people, talking to more people over time, getting on the phones. The more people you talk to, the more people that give you objections, the more you're saying them, the more comfortable you get with it. I think it's just staying consistent is like the biggest thing for me has been staying consistent.
Okay, cool, awesome. So I noticed too in one of your calls, a couple of your calls I was listening to, that your tone has kind of adapted to the market a little bit. Do you feel like what caused that shift for you, or what allowed you to kind of have a tone shift? Because I don't know, you just sound super comfortable with it.
Getting comfortable, like knowing, having the knowledge of knowing what
your
I'm
tonality,
talking about
right?
on the phone, too. I mean, that helps because you go in having the confidence to know of what you're saying and everything like that. So if they do come back with like an objection or whatever, you're confident with it, and then your tone too. Like you don't want to sound like you're, I don't know, like you don't care, or like you're not, because life insurance isn't always the most, fun topic for anybody to talk about. So you do want to come in there with some energy to be like, hey, you are excited about this, and let them know that this is an important thing, to have done.
Okay, cool. Huge. And when you get to the What's the most common objection you run into in the close?
Either they'll tell me, they need to think about it, or yeah, mainly it's, hey, I need to think about it, and that pretty much for me comes down to they're unsure about, pricing and things like that.
Okay, so when they have to think about it, when they say they have to think about it, how do you handle that to kind of isolate what the objection is?
I mean, I'll just be like, hey, listen, obviously, this is something that's important to you, and you've been thinking about this for a while. My job is to just get you approved for this because we do want to make sure, that we can get you approved for something first and foremost before we move forward with this, and then kind of get the approval and everything from the insurance companies. Kind of go with it that way. And if it is the price, I'll be like, well, listen, what out of these different options I gave you makes the most sense to you? Kind of something like that.
Okay, cool.
Because
Awesome.
everybody's budget's different, so.
Yeah, it is. You consistently get high premium deals. How do you do that?
Because I always let them know, hey, this is the max amount of coverage that you qualify for. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't let you know that you did qualify for this. I want you to know what options and all options are available to you. I'll always start quoting the highest and then work my way down. Usually, people tend to have the money for it, and it's a matter of, how important it is to them and, how much coverage they do want to leave behind. But I think people are genuinely interested. They do want to know, that they do qualify for that max amount. And then, like I said, work your way down.
Sure. Okay, cool. So you start high and then you work your way down through the. Have you noticed a higher percentage of high premium deals fall off, or have you noticed it's kind of consistent between all the premium sizes?
I think the higher premiums tend to stick more. Because most of the time, somebody that is paying a higher premium, they probably have the money to do it. Sometimes people with, that are kind of trying to nickel and dime the cheapest thing, as far as, to looking at different insurance companies, they tend to fall off. And, like I tell them is, you do get what you pay for. So if you're looking for the cheapest option, don't be surprised when it's not the best option for you.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually ran the numbers one time, everybody watching this, and the only premium that had a higher percentage of falling off was under $50 or like under $40 or something like that.
Exactly.
Those super low ones were the ones that, the quality was just like, it was so bad. Cool. So I know you also get a lot of follow-up sales. So let's share with people here. What does your follow-up look like? Like how do you do that? What indicates? Well, we'll start. What's an overview of what your follow-up system looks like?
So I mean, depending on how the conversation goes, if it's somebody who has, let's say if they're working or something, I've gone through a little bit with them, gathered some health information or something like that. Obviously, they're at work, so they're not in a position to buy because they're not going to have all the information they would need at that point. So obviously, I would move that to a different time of when they're off work, or somebody that I have gone through quotes and everything like that, and they have told me know that they needed to wait multiple different times. I'll put that as a follow up because sometimes a couple days might change or something like that. Sometimes I tend to keep people in my follow ups that I probably shouldn't, but then I think I can get them to flip. So I mean it's up to what you hear in their voice. I think over time you can hear if they are serious about it, and I'll also ask them like how important is something like this to you, or on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this to you before I even get off the phone with them, so that way I know I'm not wasting my time with that person when I do call them back. So that helps too.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think that like we work age leads and new leads here. So I feel like if an age lead buys, there's just a new lead that didn't get followed up with enough, right?
Yeah.
So, like, how many follow-ups will you go through before being like, okay, I'm just gonna move on?
I'll follow up with somebody for a couple months, to be honest with you. Like if, because sometimes they won't answer, but then like you'll get that one day, like when they just happen to pick up, and they'll be like, "Hey, I've been waiting for your call," and you'll be like, "Oh, okay," but you don't say that. You just continue on with what you're saying, but that does happen. So probably, honestly, a couple months. I've got people in my calendar now that I've had in there since November that I'm still calling. But sometimes I think maybe I should give up on it. But on the off chance they do pick up, I kind of keep them in there.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to call them once or twice a week. You know what I mean? And if you're watching this, guys, you don't have to call someone that you've been following up with for 3 months like every day, right? But like, hey, call them Monday, they don't answer, try Thursday, and then set an appointment for Tuesday or whatever. Shoot them a text message. Like, you just want to follow up and stay in touch with people, because also, think about this too. A lot of those follow-up sales that he gets are people that he had to work to be in touch with, and if they're not answering him, they're not answering other people. So him putting that effort in is, one, it's going to earn their respect, and number two, it means that, hey, you know what, they're going to be harder for someone else to sell, because very rare chance it's going to be like just a one-call close replacement or something like that if someone else gives them a call, because it was so hard for him to actually like be consistent and stay with that sale. So what's the reason why you wouldn't follow up with someone?
Honestly, it depends on where you're at as far as like how
so
many
someone,
sales.
Let's do this. If someone says like, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say it depends on like how many sales you're consistently making. So like now, if I'm having difficulty with somebody who's looking for a $30 a month policy, I'm kind of like, and I can't get them, and I'm kind of like, okay, like, is this really worth my time? Again, it depends on where you're at, as far as if you're just starting or you've been doing it for a little bit and you're kind of like, okay, like maybe I'll move on to something that's, somebody else out there that's more worth my time. Again, depends on where you're at.
That makes sense. So, when someone okay, so sometimes like we call people and they tell us that they're busy, and they actually are busy, right? It's like you can tell, like when I would call someone, if I heard they were driving, I'd be like, hey, oh, you driving? Yeah. Oh, where you headed? I'd be like, oh, I'm headed back to work, or like I'm like, oh, I'm just pulling into, so, like if it was something where I knew they probably wouldn't be able to do it, or for whatever reason they are busy, they can't. Like, is there anything you do to validate whether that's someone that you should call back? Like, how do you address, or do you always call them back?
Yeah, I'll say the same thing. I'll be like, hey, listen, is this something that's important to you? And sometimes off the bat, they'll just be like, no, I don't really care about this. And I'll be like, okay. And then, or you'll get, yeah, this is something that is interesting to me. So then I'll obviously be like, hey, what's the best time that works for you? Sometimes you get people that are like, oh, I don't know, like, what time I usually get home. And you're kind of like, okay, like, how about in the evening time? And you got to like get it out of them to schedule it. But, basically if, I'll ask them, how important is this to you?
Yeah, I don't know what time I get home from work.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. One thing I like to ask people, I liked to ask people is this something that's on your to-do list? That was a way for me to evaluate, hey, like, without saying, do you want life insurance? It was a way to be like, do you want life insurance?
Right, right.
Are there any buying signs that you hear, in like when you hear certain things, are there certain things you hear, you're like, man, this is like going to be a sale?
Yeah. When I'm going through everything on the script, and I'll be like, telling them how they're small yet affordable plans, everything like that, and they'll be like, oh yeah, you can hear it in their voice and how excited they are about it. And if they have a beneficiary, as far as a loved one that they have stated already, and they're like, yes, this is the person I would have, I think that helps as well. When you ask them if they have something in place, if they don't have coverage, and something I recently started asking is like, hey, like, how does that make you feel about not having something in place? Like, are you okay with that? And then you can tell, by the way they say it, if they're not or they don't care. But obviously, a buying sign is going to be if they are like, hey, this is something that's important to me.
Okay, awesome, cool. So let's we've talked about some of the sales stuff that you go through. Actually, let me ask this, and then we'll transition to something else. What type of questions do you ask people to build value or to build urgency?
If you passed away today, how would your family pay for something like this? Or is this, like I said, if you passed away today, how would you pay for something like this is one I usually use. Or how would your family pay for something like this? Kind of along those lines is like the urgency of it. And then also, when you are asking health questions, letting them know, hey, we want to make sure that you can get approved for this because, this is something that's going to be day one coverage for you, as to where, if something major happens to your health between now and, say if you're like, I want to wait a couple months, then, you're drastically changing the coverages you can get, because that's the truth. Because I've had it before where I've had somebody who had a stroke and had told me they wanted to wait, and a week later they had a stroke, and then it completely changed what they could get. And I was like, kind of like, okay, that's what I was trying to explain to you, but not everybody wants to hear that.
All right, cool, awesome, man. Thank you. So let's walk everybody through a typical day for you, so they know what it's like to work a full day selling final expense over the phone. So, like, what's your morning routine look like? What is your and then what's your activity look like throughout the day?
I typically, obviously, I have a baby, so I get up pretty early. I get up at 5:30, 6ish, take care of him, and then I'll kind of go through, check my emails, maybe watch a couple Cardone Yoon videos, and then at that point, obviously, we have the morning meetings and everything like that. And then around 9, I'll start dialing. I try not to get out of my chair until I've made a sale. Like, I'll try. You don't have to do this, but I try not to get out of my chair and eat lunch until I've made a sale. Which you don't have to do. I just try to do it because then it keeps me pushing. Because then I have okay, I can eat after I make this sale or whatever. And then usually around 12. 12-ish, 12:50-ish, I'll go and eat, and then I'll go back. And for me, I usually work until 6:30, just because having the baby and everything, I kind of have to work around that. Sometimes I'll work later, just depending on if my wife's home or anything like that. But usually till 6:30. But then I'm consistently dialing until then, and then
Okay, cool.
As far as talk time and everything, probably around at least 3 to 4 hours, somewhere in there.
Okay, cool. So you're essentially dialing and you're working from 8 a.m. when we have our meeting until 6 p.m. So you're putting in a 10-hour day.
Yeah.
Awesome, cool. And look, if you guys, a lot of people here are working have worked typical hourly 9 to 5 type job. 8 to 6 isn't much different, because I used to have to commute, and I sometimes I'd have to work at a different place every day. So it was I would, it's getting on the computer at 8 and then getting off at 6 is the same thing as me getting in my car at 8, being at work at 8:39, and then leaving at 5 and getting home at 5:36. So it kind of ends up being the same thing. So if you look at I was just working 8 hours a day. 10 is, you actually probably work closer to 10 because you commute and everything else. So keeping that consistency, what are some things that will maybe come up in the day that could potentially be a deterrent to that consistency for you?
Obviously, like I said, the baby. So if I hear him crying in the other room and he's with my wife, I tend to want to get up to go and help her. But Yeah, that kind of is a thing that comes up. Or, when you get people that, if you're not having a higher contact rate where people are picking up, you start to kind of, get upset about it and you're kind of like, oh, okay. And then your energy starts to drop. So, like, when something
Hmm.
like that happens for me, I just stop. I'll, like, watch, like, a quick, like, 5-minute video on, like, whatever. And then I'll, like, regain my energy and then go back to it. But, obviously like when you're not getting a lot of people picking up, it can kind of bring you down a little bit.
Yeah, I can. What do you do for leads?
As far as what do you mean?
Like, so most people watching this are buying their own leads. So what do you do for leads?
Well, SLS,
Where do you get leads?
from SLS, they provide them, so it's a lot easier than paying out of your own pocket for leads, which makes it a lot different. It could be a lot more stressful as far as when you're first starting if you're paying out of your pocket for every single lead. As to where SLS provides that for you, it makes it a lot easier for you as far
Yeah,
as
exactly.
financially wise.
Yeah, like getting started for sure. It's a lot more forgiving in a system like ours because we provide leads to everybody. Now, if you're out on your own, I'd recommend starting with aged leads. We start all new agents and aged leads anyway, and I recommend you guys starting there because if you go spend $1,000 on 50, I mean, how quick can you dial 50 leads?
I'd probably say like hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah. So if you could essentially buy 50 leads and have 5 people answer, and you just spent $1,000. Now that's not to
Yeah.
say that that's only 5 are going to answer all time, but you definitely want to have a volume in telesales, and you can work on new leads and inbound calls and stuff, and self-generating your own leads. But you definitely want to work on at first have high volume. How do you take live transfers a lot? I've never looked at the stats for you.
Yeah, as much as I can. I mean, if I'm not on the phone with somebody and I'm going to the next contact, if one pops up, I'll grab it. Yeah, I mean, honestly, sometimes if I'm like dialing and the phone's ringing and then a live transfer pops up, I'll take it. Because sometimes those can
Okay.
be, it can be like a little bit of a switch up from calling people to having somebody that's being transferred from you. It can kind of help.
And how do you handle live transfers when they come in?
I'll obviously be like, hey, this is Zach with Senior Life Services. They'll transfer the person to me. If it's like, obviously, for example, Miss Jones or something like that, I'll say, hey, Miss Jones, this is Zach. How you doing today? She'll say good. And I'll be like, now, Miss Jones, we really only call for 2 reasons. One, to see exactly what benefits and plans you do qualify for, and 2, to see exactly what your needs are. But one common need I do find in every person that I speak with is that they do want to make sure that their family and loved ones are taken care of. And, God forbid when the good Lord does call you home and you have something in place to lift that financial burden and cover final expenses. Does that sound a little bit like yourself? And then obviously if they say yes, I'll continue right into going with my script.
Awesome. Cool. Sweet. So, what are your goals, man? What are your goals for this year?
Obviously, 6-figure income, well into the 6-figure income. Try not to put a cap on it to where, I'm capping myself and being like, okay, I got here now.
Well, you'll
like,
grow over
I'm
time,
good.
though.
Right, but I'm saying I'm not trying
Yeah.
to be like, okay, I'm here now, like I'm good. I want to, continue to, because I think sometimes, obviously, I catch myself doing that too. When I'm like, okay, I've reached this point, I can like relax. But, that's
Hmm.
kind of a bad thing to have. I try to just keep going, like keep pushing it even further than where I'm at now.
Cool. Awesome. Well, hopefully we can help you get there, man. So we're about time running up here. Want to see if you have anything else that you want to share with the audience here. Any recommendations you get for anybody jumping into telesales or who's struggling in telesales?
I mean, honestly, like I said, staying consistent. If you're worried about getting on the phone, get on the phone. Don't watch other people. I mean, you can do that, for like maybe like a day, but the best thing to do is get on the phone, get the objections and then overcome them, because the less you're on the phone, the harder it becomes.
All right, so get on the phone, get beat up, jump into it. You're not going to know everything before you start, and that's just how it goes. So, guys, if you're interested in working with either Zach or myself, you can check a link that I'm putting in the description of the video, or you can email me at jve@thejve.com. Thank you so much, Zach, and you guys are going to want to watch this next video coming up, and it's another interview with an extremely talented agent, and you do not want to miss this. Thank you.